All right, everyone, good morning. Welcome to our Development Services Forum. Thank you for coming at an unusual day and time to accommodate the ability to have some consultants here who we're very grateful to because they woke up, as did we, but even earlier in the morning to come and travel here to be with us today. So we are here to gather feedback on the city's economic development strategic plan. We were here a couple of months ago for the first phase of this, which was basically a look in the mirror. We wanted to know where we were at that point in time, what were the numbers around Walnut Creek. Several of you were here for that. Now we're actually talking about where we would like to be. So we're putting together a series of strategies to say, what should the city be doing over the next 5 years, really, to move us into the next phase of our economic development. And this is a plan that ideally is not just something used by city staff. So speaking very personally, it's not just my work plan over the next 5 years for how to help you, although that's a piece of it, but it's also something that will be used cross departments and also cross organizations. So it's something that ideally our community partners in the chamber or Walnut Creek downtown, as well as our private partners like many of you in the audience or outside agencies, will be bought into and feel like it aligns with where you think you're going so that we're all kind of swimming in the same direction and can go together. So with that said, I will introduce to you Mandy and Patrick from Management Partners. So Patrick O'Keefe will be leading us today. They've been leading us through this process. So the current phase that we're at is a series of draft strategies. We're going to get feedback on this through a tour of organizations locally, as well as written feedback for those of you who are watching from home and would like to send that our way. And then we'll actually be finalizing the strategies and bringing those to council for their feedback again on November 20th is our next big date. So between now and then, that's really where we're doing a lot of the outreach. And we'd really like to hear from you while you're here. And that includes staff as well as people who are in the audience. All right, I'll put that back up. All right, thank you all. I'll turn it over. Thanks, Pat.
Great, thank you. So good morning. So for those of you who were here at the first session, and for those of you, thank you, who may not have been, just a reminder of what we're doing today and how it kind of fits into the overall set of tasks that Management Partners is doing. If you go on the website, there's a 2004 economic development plan. It consists of two major parts. One is an economic study that looks at demographics, looks at trends, and the second is a set of policies of things for the city to do to try and enhance economic development within the city. So we're updating that plan, and we're following the same structure. And the last meeting that we had with all of the various groups was to look at a new economic development study, and that was presented by Kraft Consulting and Applied Economic Development. And so that study then forms the basis of a number of these policies that you're going to see today. And these policies then, as Jessica mentioned, are kind of a to-do list for the next 5 years for not only staff but the city council. And there are a number, you'll see there are community and the development community in making these policies come to fruition. So that's what we're doing today. Just a quick discussion of the overall framework of the policies. So on the broadest level, there's a vision statement that we're taking from the prior plan. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because you'll see many of the words that are in the vision statement appear within the goals and the strategies. And then working down towards the bottom, the most specific items then are the action items. And those are things that ultimately will have a time frame associated with them and who's responsible and some estimate of how much it would cost to implement them. And then in between those two, in the middle there, the goals and strategies are kind of organizing elements, so they're major topic areas, as you'll see. So vision statement, we have handouts. You can spend time looking at this in detail if you like. As I said, many of the words that are in this statement we will see within the proposed goals. So there are 4 major goals. And you'll see throughout this presentation that we have highlighted keywords there's a lot of verbiage in the policies. I'm not going to read them all to you because it wouldn't be interesting. So I'm just going to hit highlights, the key words that are in both the goal statements and also the strategies and the action items. So a diverse economy, fiscal vitality, maintain the regional orientation and destination of the city, and enhance quality of life are the major goals. And then within those, there are a set of strategies. And this first goal on fostering a diverse economy has 10 strategies. It's the longest one. And we're going to stop after each goal and ask for your input so that you're not just hearing a presentation for a long period of time. So this first one takes a while to work through, but it has many important policies associated with it. So you'll see the letters then A, B, C, D are the strategies. So support existing businesses to grow through economic gardening, identify clusters and support clusters of businesses, and support new business formation. So then drilling down further within each of those, for growing the economic base, then creating and maintaining a predictable regulatory framework. So that's the city's permit system is the one that's easiest to think about that, although it involves more than just that. Business support and promotion, providing information to existing businesses, and identifying companies with growth potential to support additional growth. And within the economic study, one of the things that it talks about is that a key driver of economic activity are businesses that are in the range of about 50 to 100 employees. Those are the ones that are primed for the greatest amount of growth. So that's what that's oriented towards. And then the next strategy about clusters. So this is something that many cities do in their economic development plans. You want to identify where you have like businesses and work with those businesses on strengthening that cluster. So those clusters may share the employment base, and there may be activities that they want to do on a joint basis to improve their position. And then under new business formation, inventory existing commercial spaces that would support new businesses, identify and disseminate information on tax credit programs and lending institutions, and create a new business guide. So business guide would be CPAs and other support businesses that a startup business would need in order to flourish. And then continuing under new business formation, implementing regulatory improvements, and you'll see there in the fine print on this one, the city's development services division has a blueprint for success. So the city has already identified a number of things that it would like to do in order to make its regulatory climate supportive of business activity. And so continuing on with those policies will be important. And then business and entrepreneur support program. So then going to the next three strategies, identifying and attracting target industries, encouraging new hotel development, support maker craft businesses. So we'll drill down into each of those. So in looking at attracting industries, so one of the items that came up in the economic study was that the city has some very strong areas, sectors, healthcare in particular, and those should be continued, but it also makes sense for the city to try and diversify its economic base. And so that's what this strategy is oriented around, is what other target industries would be appropriate to try and attract. And then so promoting the city to those industries that are identified is the second one. So encouraging new hotel development. There are 2 hotels that are under construction. The economic study said that even after those rooms come on stream, that and the economic study looked out over a period of 10 years. that there's still the potential for another 300 rooms. And so pursuing that through identifying sites and promoting to potential hotel developers is an appropriate strategy. So this one also goes to the idea of diversifying the city's economic base. So a very large portion of the city's tax revenue is from sales tax, which is, as you know, is very highly cyclical. And one of the things that the study recommends is that we try and diversify to other tax revenues, and so transient occupancy tax revenues, TOT revenues that come from hotels is important. Then the next set of strategies include improving shadelands, enhancing the downtown core, focusing on the North Main Street area, and supporting transit-oriented development at the BART stations. And so drilling down to each of those. So in shadelands, there was interesting when we had a discussion with shadelands, there's kind of competing visions about what shadelands should be and what it should attract. And so this top bullet is about spending some time figuring out what that vision for shadelands is. And secondly, to inventory and advertise vacancies that would accommodate businesses. And thirdly, assist with the renewal of their property business district, which is a very important tool for their success. Then enhancing the downtown core, identifying co-working spaces, so as an alternative to traditional office space to support small business growth, and things that can be done to retain existing retailers. And then on developing North Main Street, so there's a specific plan that's been completed for this area. It has recommended land uses within the North Main Street area. It is an opportunity for additional, more intense development near the freeway, and this is identified as an area that should be focused on. And then transit-oriented development, much has already happened near the BART station. There is still areas near the Pleasant Hill BART station that is within the north downtown area that can, there's development opportunities and business opportunities in those areas. So I'll stop there. That's the end of the first goal, and ask for your comments and questions. And Mandy's going to record those, and we're going to group those all together and provide them to the City Council. So please don't be bashful. The last set of meetings that we had, some of the policies that you're seeing up here now came from the input that we received from people. So it's very important to hear your input. So who'd like to start?
And I think the key questions we're thinking about on this front are, which ones do you feel most important? Like if we really could only do one or two in this area, which ones feel like the one or two to focus our energies on? Which ones feel like they actually are not important at all and probably are misalignment of priorities? And then what's missing in these topics that you feel like are something we could consider? Exactly, specifically in this section, and then we'll get to the future ones, or if you've seen anyone do it particularly well.
And I think we're recording this, so we're going to be giving you the microphone. Is that right? So we can get it on tape.
Just a comment in regards to fostering a diverse economy. It's great that everybody wants, the Googles of the world or the latest and greatest technologies, but fostering the talent that's within the community and so the surrounding community is important, and seeing what sort of entrepreneurs are doing now and today, I think is more important than trying to go to conferences to solicit some, some latest high-tech fad.
Do you have any thoughts on how to do that, how to grow that at home?
I think, like for example, when you are saying you want to pull together studies that would help out, local businesses, we'll get the business communities, members of certain sectors together, ask them, what sort of information that might be helpful to the whole lot of them, and then see what they have to say.
Others? Okay, we'll move on. So that's a good comment. That was one of the things that the economic study identified too as a key area is start at home and grow your existing businesses. All right, so then starting with, moving on, to goal 2, enhance fiscal vitality. So there's fewer strategies here under this one than the last one. So starting with A, increase broadband capacity. B, work with auto dealers to adapt to trends. And I'll just pause for a second on this one. I mentioned to you that sales tax is a huge proportion of the city's revenue stream. Auto dealerships are about 30% of that sales tax revenue. So they are a huge piece of the city's operational capacity. And then C, assess opportunities for additional office development. So then drilling down into each of those. So under broadband capacity, there are a number of private networks that are available, and the trick here is to find out what if there are gaps that that need to be addressed. And then secondly, the city is doing its own fiber optic installation for traffic signals and other infrastructure, and this bullet point relates to whether or not that study could be expanded to look at filling gaps that are identified under the first bullet. So then looking for opportunities for office development. So the first policy is about inventorying new development sites, and these don't necessarily need to be vacant. They could be existing underutilized sites. Inventory the sites and promote them, and then also identify and pursue new trends in office development, such as flexible spaces. Sorry, just skip backwards there. Forgive me, this is being aggressive and it's moving. Okay, so then B is auto trends, as I mentioned. This is a key aspect of the city's health. So working with existing dealerships and looking at strategies for consolidating auto storage is one of the policies that's identified in the North Specific Plan. And then under office development, looking for new development sites in both downtown and Shadelands, and looking at trends. So then the next set of strategies is assessing the impact of internet sales on retail, identifying adequate supply of commercial space, and retaining and attracting firms that have growth potential. I think I will ask you to advance them. I seem to be struggling with that. All right, so internet sales is definitely affecting existing retail. And so figuring out what those trends are and adapting to them will be key. And then looking at the existing zoning and regulatory policies to see how those trends can be supported is important. Thanks. For commercial space, again, finding out where those spaces are and creating a strategy for the use of city-owned sites. There's not very many at this point. A couple of them have already been spoken for, but there are still a couple that could be looked at that are commercially zoned, and encouraging high quality, smaller office space. So it's not just the large office users that are important, but it's also looking, particularly in the downtown area, what smaller spaces might be available for small businesses, and then supporting those startup and expanding businesses. On retail, looking at creating a facade and tenant improvement program would be important. There are a number of buildings that are in poor condition that could be improved, and then also trying to encourage the reoccupancy of vacant properties. So then under attracting strong and expanding strong growth, looking at what the economic needs of the city are and building into the city's budget items that would support these economic policies, and making sure that when fees are raised in the future that the city council is thinking about its economic goals in their minds when they're considering those fee increases. Next. So then the next set of strategies here is supporting local research institutions, supporting workforce training organizations, and supporting strategic expansion of the retail. And research institution is one that overlaps somewhat with educational institutions, so strengthening those bonds with Cal State and University of California are important. And then there are, under workforce training, there are a number of existing organizations that are state and federally funded that can be utilized to help our existing businesses tap into and help train their workforce. On retail, it's important, since retail is a very dynamic sector and always changing, to be aware of the trends. And so getting the advice of people who are experts in that area is important, and looking for new businesses that can be pursued is important. Questions and comments on that goal?
I'll call out our friends at Central San, if you don't mind. I'm just curious if you guys have, and this gets between this item and the last goal, have you guys come up with anything or tried anything that's really supported the kind of smaller or smaller businesses who come through, or made any kind of streamlining or regulatory improvements that you've noticed and would recommend, or that we should sync up with in thinking about this? Okay. I've been curious if that's been something that other agencies have tackled as well.
Thank you. Just a few comments on the last series of slides. Fees, there's a desire to promote hospitality, but the fees for just a standard 350 square foot hotel room can run over $50,000 a hotel room. And so working with, not only looking at the city fees, but working with the other utilities to try to reduce that maybe up front, and then figure out a way to reimburse it after it's built, might be a good way to promote those and get the tax dollars coming into the city. The other item is some of the things that were up there in terms of promoting different types of businesses. Of course, I work for Hall Equities Group. We have the sports mall that's going up in the Shadelands area. There's a real opportunity in the Shadelands area to have other businesses that will complement that. Sports tech, sports medicine, sports academies, those sorts of things. Just again, building on some of the investment that's already going on today. And the other item that I think is missing up there is Walnut Creek has a very large senior population, and skilled nursing, different types of senior care and housing are something that could be of real value to this community, because the need is already there, as well as complementing those with either childcare or or putting it next to, I know, like the veterans facility next to the ARF facility. Things like that that can be complementary if you do promote the sorts of senior and elderly uses. Thank you.
Before you turn over the mic, there good comments, much appreciated. So when you were talking about the fees, and you mentioned other organizations as well, are you thinking like the East Bay Mud connection fees, those kinds of things? Or?
Yeah, water, sewer, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, and having a creative dialogue with those folks to, you know, everybody has to cover their budgets, but maybe it can be done in such a way where the fees are deferred, or, you know, those sort of solutions to try to encourage upfront development, and then, you know, get have the tax dollars come in, and then it will pay for the services that are needed. Thank you.
Something else that came up at this forum last time that we came to you, which was directly reflected in this part of the plan, was this idea that there are stages in the office pipeline that we might be missing, where once we have somebody who is looking for a particularly small space, or they've already got their small space and they're ready to grow into kind of a medium-sized space, that they may not actually be able to easily find that. So that was something that was reflected in the policies around starting to think about how to get more flexible co-working spaces, all the way to looking at what those medium and larger spaces might look like. Any other comments on this section before we move ahead? Okay.
Okay, so the next goal really is a recognition of the regional orientation of Walnut Creek being at a crossroads and building on that strength. So promoting arts and culture. So the city already has a very good start in this area, but it becomes an asset to existing businesses and residents, as well as businesses and residents in the greater area. So it's something that should continually be looked at and improved upon and strengthened where possible. So identifying and promoting those assets for visitor attraction. And it's not just things like the leisure center, but there are also items like the open space and cultural events. And then supporting efforts by local arts organizations to continue those, the city's strength in that area. And then in promoting visitor attraction, creating a day visitor marketing strategy, and then also identifying sites for additional arts and entertainment and hospitality uses within the downtown specific plan. This strategy is about meeting and staying in touch with those arts and cultural organizations to assess opportunities to grow. And then the next set of strategies under this regional destination is promote linkages between shopping, entertainment, and dining, because there's a synergy that goes on with those various uses. Strengthen the hotel and meeting space facilities, and strengthening the regional business efforts. So under each of those, drilling down for C, continuing to assist with organizing community events and programs, and recognizing that the cultural events help attract hotel and retail patrons. Next. So under the conference facilities, there's some interest in looking at this and looking at the feasibility of it. So these bullet points are about doing a feasibility study and completing an analysis of tourism benefits that would support conference facilities and hotels, and developing a comprehensive promotional campaign for all of the assets that the city has. And then under regional business efforts, there are a number of regional organizations that it's important to stay a part of and support. Next. So questions and comments on this goal? Yes?
I'm glad. I need it. It's early. Haven't gotten any steps in yet today.
The one that I was looking for when I looked at this that I didn't see is the youth sports. I know there's a lot going on with what's going on at Shadelands, but we also have youth sports facilities such as Clark Swim Center, which have the potential, which will need to be redeveloped and have the potential to draw regional youth sports types activities. I didn't see that in this claim.
Yeah, good addition. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of energy around youth sports. Other comments?
I'll say that part of the regional partnerships one went to the fact that this plan really is trying to recognize that some of the work can be done at the city level. Some of this work that's important to economic development, like housing and transportation, that we know is, and workforce training, frankly, is pretty critical, also needs regional partners. And that includes many of you in the room, and a lot of the work we've been trying to do with the forum, but also other forums that we're a part of throughout the region. Other questions or feedback on these points? All right.
Okay, so on to our final goal. So quality of life is an important aspect of economic development. People will want to be here if there's a good quality of life, whether it's for residing here or shopping or working here. So the set of strategies under this include emphasizing quality of life as part of economic development so that that doesn't get lost, supporting downtown housing with workforce and trying to reduce traffic in mind, encouraging a range of housing to meet various needs of a diverse workforce, and then encouraging the development of high-quality public spaces. So drilling down for each of these, citing quality of life assets and marketing materials, so it's just kind of celebrating and letting people know about those. Including a quality of life impact analysis when the city is looking at various developments. Using best practices to improve quality of life and creating indicators of good quality of life. And then thoughtful experimentation concerning public and private partnerships that would enhance quality of life. So this last one recognizes that there are nonprofits and for-profit groups that the city could work with in order to enhance quality of life. Supporting downtown housing. So this is key to creating a workforce that will support the businesses without having to undertake long commutes. So identifying sites and looking at a range of housing options. The existing housing element of the city has a requirement to create affordable housing, and so these two bullets recognize that and repeat that obligation so that it stays on the front of everyone's mind. That's what it was doing to me. And then public spaces are an important attractor to people, and so creating an inventory of where those could be created, not only on public property, but also private. So I think that's it for that one. So questions and comments on that last goal?
I was waiting for us to get to the housing one to hand you the mic.
That's what I'm here for. I think affordable housing is essential for success of this process. Attracting businesses to a core area also needs of attracting the workers that would work for those businesses and the need to live in that area. So I don't think the housing element is addressing this in a complete sense. I would request that you will look at expanding and making this item as an essential item and expanding beyond the borders of a core area might be influencing areas within a few, maybe half a mile over the core area, and creating a real mixed use development that would attract businesses, because if the people live here, they actually make the downtown more vibrant. And if it makes it more vibrant, more businesses work, which is a cycle that keeps on growing. And we want businesses to come in. Therefore, we need people to live here.
Good comment.
Just some, comments. I'm certainly in support of affordable housing, but I think sometimes when people hear affordable housing, they really don't understand how it gets subsidized. It gets subsidized with tax dollars. It gets subsidized by the market rate people, market rate buyers. And so, there are things that the city can do to promote housing overall that, it's just basic economics, right? Supply and demand. Increase that supply. There's ways to increase supply through streamlining the permitting process, through taking a really hard look at your development standards. You have a height limit, you have setbacks, and then you have the FAR that becomes even a more limiting factor. You're going to hit your height limit when at some point that will limit your FAR on developments, and so there are so many regulations that go into the development of housing that just looking at how to streamline it and how to soften some of those development standards to encourage more housing is got to be the solution. It can't be the subsidy of government and new home buyers.
Do you have any planning? Is there anything?
Well, like I mentioned FAR. That's not really. It is kind of a streamlining issue in that you're coming up with design solutions that are less. If you have less restrictive design standards in terms of FAR, you can help streamline the process. But certainly, in this community, for example, I think the DRC does a great job. But oftentimes, people come 3 or 4 times through the DRC. Why is that needed? It's something that I haven't seen in other communities. Sometimes you go through DRC 2 or 3 times, and then you go to the city council, and you got to come back around to the DRC, and then you might get hit up with a subcommittee. That's a lot. I don't see that in most other communities. So here's one comment. And then this idea of quality of life impact analysis. Again, there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. There's a lot of city regulation, a lot of state regulation. This idea of quality of life impact analysis might be a nice study for the city to do overall, but certainly not something that should be incorporated into a checkbox for every submittal application.
So before we shift to the next, FAR, for those who are watching or don't know what that means, is floor area ratio. So it's how much building you can put on a lot. And DRC is Design Review Committee? Commission. Okay. So that's a key part of getting your project developed, is going through design review.
I second the previous comment, and I think FAR has to be really increased, especially reuse of some of the properties. Might be older properties now, and they can be redeveloped, or it can be increased density on that. And the subsidies that was mentioned as far as affordable housing, there's a huge missing middle that is called workforce housing, and could be on to 150 AMI. And that can be actually circumvented by increased density, and as a previous speaker said, reduce the red tape and making the process of approval a lot quicker, maybe making a complete CEQA for the whole area, so the individual properties don't have to go through that and can go a lot faster. If that were to happen, our studies, the Habitat, shows that the subsidies may come down to be close to zero. If we can provide a real streamlining and a real heavy density and mixed-use environment close in downtown, we can actually provide the cost of the price of those homes at affordable prices to pay for themselves.
Two good comments that are related to each other. So both of them, I think, are interesting comments in the sense that you've both identified things that are under the control of the city. So the city's regulations that involve density and floor area ratio and so forth. There are also external things that the resources the city can tap into for affordable housing to encourage it, such as the federal tax credit program coming up on the next ballot in November, or a set of state bonds for affordable housing. But of course, those things are less in the city's control than the things that you two identified.
Other comments?
Just one that came to mind after you just spoke was there is a recent, I think there's a recent law, and I wish I could remember the AB number, but it had to do, it was tying it to affordable housing, whereas instead of having fees on a per unit basis, to do it on a per square foot basis, and that encourages more units by encouraging smaller types of units. And it should be something that's not just tied to a project that has an affordable component. It should be something that's tied to the building and market rate units in general. And that will help promote, you can get more studios in the space of what would, normally be a 2-bedroom apartment. You could get 2 studios, but you don't get hit with, the high fees that we would get on a per unit basis versus figuring out a per square foot basis.
One more question, just in case it jogs anything else from you guys. So this was talking about where the city is thinking about going and the strategies for us over the next 5 or so years. Are there any things that we should know about where you're hoping to go, or where you see the kind of the industry going, or your particular organization going over the next 5 years that would be helpful context for us as we think about this? Okay, just wondering.
All right. If there aren't any other thoughts that have come to mind, that concludes today's session. Thank you very much for investing your time and coming and reviewing these policies. We appreciate it. And as I mentioned before, we'll be grouping up the input from all of these sessions that we're doing and sending that on to the City Council so they can review it when this plan goes to them for adoption in November.
November 20th will be the next one that will be where we'll be at council for their feedback. We'll keep that website updated that we emailed out to all of you. So we'll continue to post materials there in case that's helpful, and we'll reach out with next things. Thank you. This has been a series of feedback sessions over the last couple of months over the couple of different plans. So we really appreciate you guys coming and sharing your thoughts.